So he knew that Emma was going to be like this. He knew this was going to happen, but that there's a purpose to it, like you said. And so clinging to the phrase of purposeful sovereignty has really been helpful. If you really believe that, then there's no need to worry because everything's under control and this was not an accident and God has a reason. So you just go with it. And that trust, that has what's really gotten me through is the trust that this is part of God's plan. It's not
Yeah.
it's not a mistake.
We are joined today with Lisa Waner. Scott, her husband, was on the show a handful of episodes ago, and also her daughter Maddie and her other daughter Taylor. For any new listeners out there, UNspecial is really a passion that I've had for years. I taught special ed for 5 years. And since stepping away from special ed 4 years ago, it never left me. Something I'm super passionate about. And I thought this would be an awesome space to hear some stories. And so far, we're hearing some incredible stories, and it's definitely helping a lot of people. So
Good.
thank you for joining us.
Thanks for asking me. I hope I have some things that will help grandparents.
Oh, yeah. So tell me about yourself. Where are you?
So my husband Scott and I've lived in Big Bear for about 38 years now or something like that, raised all four of our kids. Both of us had been in education. I started teaching when I was 24, which was a very long time ago. But I've spent my whole career except for 1 year when I taught in San Diego. We moved to Big Bear when we were first married. And I've been in the education up here and I taught, I was a literacy specialist, I was a coach. And then my last 10 years, I've been an assistant soup for the district out of the district office. And so got to see more of a macro view of what teaching was like. And one of my very best friends was over special ed. She was the student services assistant soup. So I learned a lot from her about the special ed process and about students and parents and families, never dreaming that I would join the ranks of people that have special ed kids in their family. So, but I'm recently retired, kind of. I'm still working for the district because the person they hired quit my job and said it's too much, can't do it.
Oh, no.
So the district's called me back to help with some major projects before until they get the position filled. So I'm retired, kind of. So I have a balance between that and then helping Madison with her three kids under the age of 3, one of them being special needs. So it's the Lord knew the timing was perfect for me to retire to be available to support her, having no idea that this was what retirement was going to look like for me. But it's all good.
Did it take a while to come to terms with that, or how?
With what, that I wasn't going to be jetting off to Europe for vacation, and
Yeah,
you
or
know,
Idaho?
yeah. Well, we still make it to Idaho. In fact, I'm wearing my Sandpoint sweatshirt that
Nice.
Sydney gave me in honor of Idaho and you, Zach.
We gotta get you some Ponder construction swag.
Yeah, no, I agree. I will take it. So yes, it's not. You'll ask my kids. I'm pretty much a control person and always have been, and that hasn't always gone really well when you're raising 4 kids of your own.
Mhm.
But really, really working on giving up that control and just enjoying every day. And I think when the Lord gave us Emma, that pointed even further that I have no control really on what happens, but I can control my response to that and how I'm going to support and be there. So it's been a pretty big journey for me personally with little Emma Grace. But I'll tell you, she is an angel. Just, she brings such light into the room. And, she's nonverbal, she's non ambulatory, but stuff's going on in her head. And you just see her eyes. She's the kind of kid that looks into your soul. And so you want to straighten up, behave yourself because she's looking at you.
Man, that's intimidating.
It is a little. And then, because she's nonverbal, we've learned to read her needs. And the only time she's cranky is when she's tired or hungry, which I'm cranky when I'm tired or hungry. So that's nothing new. But I swear she's an angel. She is an
Mhm.
angel. And went through a long time of why, Lord, why did you give us this little girl, especially to Madison, her first baby. It was rough at first, but I think I'll never forget something that Scott said when we realized that Emma had some developmental issues. And I said, "What are we going to do?" And he goes, "We're just going to love her. We're going to love her and give her whatever she needs." So that's what, she's 3.5 now. And that's been a journey for that. And there's some other things I can talk about down the road too.
Yeah. Well, you brought up something interesting. When she's cranky, she's hungry and whatnot. Coming back to the house after dropping the kids off, I had a thought. There's a common term in special education, ABC, antecedent behavior consequence. What's going on before, what's the behavior, and then how are you essentially going to punish it? But I had a hard time with that term, and I've changed it to always be curious.
Oh,
Like,
I like that.
curious about why the behavior is actually happening. In that instance, she's hungry.
Right.
But we're so quick to like jump to, we need to stop this without taking the whole picture
Hmm.
and like kind of zooming out and seeing it is for what it is. When did you, so she's 3.5, went, and I know she was a home birth. That went just textbook.
Yes, it did. But I know you're going to ask, when did we know there were issues
Yeah.
with Emma? Probably about 5 minutes after she was born, because God bless the midwife. She was looking at her, and Emma had sores down her arms and her legs, very, very unusual. And she was looking at it, and I'll never forget, we had missed the birth by about 30 minutes. Maddie called, and she does not wait for anybody, man. So she had that baby before we could get there because they were about an hour away. And the midwife said, "You need to take her in to see the doctor." And I said, "Oh, like tomorrow?" She goes, "No, like right now. You need to take her right now." Immediately we knew there was issues, so we piled everybody in the car, Maddie and JD, and Emma. And I'll never forget when Scott was driving down to Loma Linda. When I turned around and looked at Emma, she was blue, and she was teeny tiny in the car seat, and I really didn't know if she was going to make it because we didn't
Oh
know what the
gosh.
problem was. She didn't nurse right away. She was very lethargic. So we went and we spent a week at the NICU at Loma Linda
How
when they
far
were
was
doing
the
all kinds of
drive?
what?
How far was the drive
About
from
an
there?
hour,
Okay.
about an hour from Crestline. Yeah. And they took her right away. The midwife had called ahead and said we were coming. So they took her in right away. And poor Madison just had a baby in a blow up pool in her living room. And the midwife says, "You need to go right now to the hospital." So I'm thinking, I mean, I had 4 in a hospital, type of condition, but Maddie had to get up, take a shower. I mean, she had just given birth, get up, take a shower, get dressed, and get in the car. I
Oh my
mean, it
gosh.
was quite a stressful situation, but we had her at Loma Linda. It took 4 or 5 days. She was in the NICU, and something that was really sweet in the NICU, you can only have 2 people at a time with the baby, and one of them has to be a parent. So we would switch back and forth, and one of the nurses said, because we were all there. Taylor came down, and Drew and Sydney came down from Ventura. So we were all together in my in law's condo in Redlands. It was very crowded, but it was actually a great family time. But we all switched off and took turns to be with Emma. And the nurse said, "I have never seen a baby so loved before."
Wow.
Because we have babies in here that nobody comes to visit. And it's
Hmm.
so sad, but Emma was never by herself, except one night we made Maddie come home because she wasn't sleeping at all and rest. But so they took care of her. So we knew right away there were going to be issues. We didn't know what the condition was until they let her out of the hospital. She was starting to nurse. She was doing better, but they had done all these blood tests and everything. And they said she has a genetic disorder. And so we've had multiple doctor visits. So we've known from the beginning there were issues. And then when she was about 6 months old, when you would pick her up, you know how babies will stand up, they will try to stand and they'll push and they'll jump. She didn't do any of that. She would just pull her legs up underneath herself. So we just knew there was development delay issues. At first we thought it was just, I can't remember the term of it now, but through different diagnoses, at one point we knew she had a genetic disorder called IP. It's called incontinentia pigmenti. Never heard of it before. Looked it up, all kinds of symptoms of it, everything from pointy, sharp teeth and fingernails to bald patches on their hair. I mean, Emma had none of this. And then there could have been cognitive, there could have been nerve damage. They just, I think they really honestly didn't know. And so over the next year, Maddie's had so many doctor's appointments. We've had diagnoses from autism, from cerebral palsy, to scoliosis, to club feet. mean, all these issues. And finally, they're having a meeting this month. We finally got into Children's Hospital in Orange County, and she has a pediatric neurologist who is her doctor now. So they've done all these tests. So hopefully we'll find out. The latest diagnosis they're thinking is Rett syndrome, which I'd never even heard of it. So you look it up. But we finally came to the realization, no matter what her label is, she's Emma. And we love her and we will do for her whatever. It doesn't really matter what it's called, what she has or is diagnosed with. She's Emma. So we just love her, and her little brothers love her and make her giggle. And so I know there's cognitive going on there because she'll look at them and start to laugh and smile. And somehow she always laughs when I pick her up. And I told Maddie, I don't know if I should be insulted or I should be happy. So we've
That's
known all along. I think Maddie and JD were in denial for a while
yeah,
because first baby, they didn't know the milestones, they didn't know, and it's hard to hear from your parents. So that was a journey for all of us to come to accept. And I think something that was really interesting is they said her condition is a mosaic, which means it didn't come from either parent. They call it a spontaneous a spontaneous condition. And in my heart, I know it's not spontaneous because that's the way God made her. And he made her this way on purpose for a reason. And that has been a really center point stronghold, I think, for our family is this wasn't an accident. This wasn't an oops. This wasn't, oh my gosh, I wasn't paying attention, and I allowed this to happen to Emma. It didn't come from either parent, which I think was important because I'm sure there would be guilt, if
yeah,
they felt like it was their fault, but it wasn't. It was God's plan.
yeah. That's powerful. That's one of our core beliefs at UNspecial is every child is born for a purpose with a purpose and has a purpose. It's hard in the moment, obviously, to see that. But again, like when you zoom out and kind of just think, what is God doing? We won't really fully know, but with that mindset definitely helps charge through the days and make
Oh yeah,
sense of it. I mean,
yeah.
because you can only go so far asking why,
Right, right. We're not going to get an answer.
right?
But that, for me, what another real journey I've been on is the concept of purposeful sovereignty, which is from some books that I've read. I'm a reader anyway, but talking about how we worship a sovereign God. So he knew that Emma was going to be like this. He knew this was going to happen, but that there's a purpose to it, like you said. And so clinging to the phrase of purposeful sovereignty has really been helpful. If you really believe that, then there's no need to worry because everything's under control and this was not an accident and God has a reason. So you just go with it, and that trust, that has what's really gotten me through is the trust that this is part of God's plan. It's not
Yeah.
it's not a mistake.
Yeah, it reminds me in Exodus when Moses is having a little dialogue with God on how he's not fit to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, and then he uses his stutter as his
Right.
excuse, and then God says, who made you with that?
Right.
And God still used him. And I remember I read through that, and it inspired me to write uh, my book that's coming out in a
Mm.
couple months on how I saw God in all my special needs students. And it's with that mindset that definitely sparked a lot of the passion to kind of get that message out there to parents and
Oh yeah.
hopefully inspire them. How do you support your daughter nowadays?
It took me a long time. Like I said, I'm a control person. So when we found out that Emma had medical issues, so the irony is, and God has a great sense of humor. And Madison is my daughter who hates doctors, hates hospitals, hates any kind of medical, thinks they're all big pharma out for money. And so God gives her a daughter that's going to spend a lot of time with doctors. So Maddie has really changed her mindset, which I've been really proud of her. The hardest thing for me was if Emma was my daughter, I would be banging on the door every day. What do we do? New doctor, give me the result, trying to get answers, trying to get more appointments. What can we do? And Maddie's just like, she's fine. She's the most mellow, and her husband as well. They're very mellow. And I think, and I've told them many times, you're the perfect parents for Emma.
Hmm.
I'd probably make her crazy if I was her mother. So one of the ways that I support them is I let them do what they feel is right. I mean, they're her parents, and it's taken me 3.5 years, and I'm still working on it to just let go and let them be the parents and trust the Lord that He's going to put on their hearts what needs to happen. So really, my phrase for Madison when I talk to her is, how can I support you? How can I support you today? What do you need? Do you need me to take the boys while you take Emma to the doctor? Do you need me to take Emma to physical therapy? I mean, for a while I was taking her down the hill every week for physical therapy. So kind of just learning not to tell her what I think she needs,
Yeah.
but ask her to tell me how I can best support her. And I think it was really hard for her to ask for help at first. So it's been a learning thing for her too. I mean, she's got, Emma's 3.5 and Koa's 26 months, a little over 2, and then Milo's 8 months old. So she's got her hands full every day anyway. So I'm just super grateful that they live 10, 15 minutes away now. And that's been a huge, they moved up about a year ago when she was still pregnant with Milo. And I just said, you're going to need help and you're an hour away. I can't come. I was still working too at the time. So, but mostly supporting is, often will go out there and bring groceries or will, because, to go to the, remember one time she went to the grocery store with all 3 kids because Scott and I were both working or something. And took her like 2 hours. I'm like, are you okay? She goes, yes, but this is not for the faint of heart to take all 3 of them to the grocery store. So she's pretty incredible mom. Pretty, she's mellow. I've never ever heard her raise her voice at the kids. She
Wow.
reasons with them. Not to say it doesn't happen when I'm not there, but when we're around her a lot. And she's just very calm. And I'll never forget one time when Emma was a baby and we were starting to feed her solid foods. And Maddie fed her a bunch of food and she turned around and threw everything up. And I'm like going, oh, no. And Maddie goes, well, sometimes that happens. And she just cleans her up. I mean, it was just she's so calm. And she's always been that way. She's so, in our family, she's just like Drew and Scott, really calm, really mellow, not really reactive. And then there's Tori Taylor and myself. And we're on the other spectrum. We're a little more reactive, a little more, but so I just think Maddie's the perfect parent for Emma because she goes, it's Emma. That's who she is. We're going to take care of her. We're going to give her what she needs and just love her.
Yeah. And that's such a powerful point you made of asking her how I can support you. I know with some of the, as a son and having parents and being an adult, having them tell me what to do, it doesn't
Doesn't go
really,
very well.
and especially if it's directed at like how I should be doing things with family.
Yeah. Yeah.
But switching that to have like an inviting conversation of, how can I support you, kind of just opens up the gates to a lot more constructive.
Well, it's been interesting too because Maddie and I didn't always get along.
Hmm.
And mostly because she didn't do life the way I thought she should, when she was in high school. And then when she moved out and she actually lived with Drew for a while. And I just, even Scott reminds me, goes, you couldn't even be in the same room as Maddie
Wow.
because you guys were just, I was so frustrated at her choices and what she was doing. And so this whole journey of having to support Maddie and having to let go and let her do it and be the mom has been, now we have a wonderful relationship now. And so it's very interesting how the Lord just took this situation and turned it around. I mean, there's been moments where we've had difficulties, but not recently. So, and I think part of it is me learning to just let go. In fact, I have a huge sign in my office that you can't see, it's behind my computer, that it just says, I surrender all. Because I got to the point where I can't control any of this. I can't tell her what to do. I can't make her call the doctor. I can't make her follow through on this appointment. I can't do any of that. So I just had to let go of all of it. And it's really changed our relationship where she knows I'm not going to tell her, well, I try not to tell her what to do. She never does what I say anyway. So I don't know why I waste my time, but just really learning to show up for what she needs, not what I think she needs.
Yeah. How do you balance like when you see her making some decisions that you are like, well, that's definitely not the right decision, and not saying it? but being the support still.
It's really hard. I have a bloody tongue sometimes from biting it and not saying a word, but I've learned over time, especially with Madison, once she's made up her mind. I mean, we had a conversation about her decision to only send Emma to school 2 days a week instead of all five, which I thought she should be there all five, but she's not my daughter. It's not my decision. And I started to push back, and Maddie looked at me and goes, Mom, the decision's been made. So it's like, okay, that was pretty much, I'm not going to change my mind. So I said, okay, so how can I help you on the 3 days when she's not at school? What can we do to help?
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
kind of letting go and letting Maddie and JD be the parents. And then we're just the support system when they need it. And you're completely frozen. So I don't know if you're talking, but I can't hear anything. There you go. Kind of. Hi
I think my
again.
internet went out for a second.
Here we go.
Yeah. So how is it when you like watching her struggle?
It hurts my heart as a mom
Yeah.
because she is still my daughter. She's my baby. It's hard, and I spend a lot of time. I joke around and say I have knee pads. I spend a lot of time on my knees, just talking to the Lord. And what I've learned is I can't fix everything for her. And as a parent, that's really hard to admit. But I can support her, and I can pray for her to have strength and to have energy and make wise decisions. I really had to step back and I do this thing every morning with all of my kids where I have a mental image of it's, I don't know why I picked this, but I'm sitting on a bench overlooking the ocean, and all my kids are on the beach down below, all the kids and grandkids, and I just envision the Lord with his wings just surrounding all of them every day. So I have just a mental image in my head of just letting go and going, okay, Lord, I know you are in control. I can't control their situations, but I can support them and I can pray for them for wisdom. And so when she struggles, it drives me to my knees because as a parent, there's nothing worse than watching your kid struggle with something you can't fix. And I
Yeah.
can't fix it. Can't fix it.
Right. Right. How did you get to that place? Tell me about your support network.
My parents were incredibly wonderful Christian people. They've been gone for 6 years now, though. The Lord took them home within 8 weeks of each other. So I lost both parents in 2 months.
Man.
But my dad, so to go even before that, my dad was a missionary kid, and his parents were missionaries in Guatemala for 40, 50 years. And my grandmother, there was 90 of us under them because they had 7 kids and then all their kids and everything. So my grandmother every day would pray for every single one of us by name every day, which was amazing to me. And then when she passed away, one of my aunts took on that mantle.
Hmm.
So I think I come from a legacy of prayer and support, and fortunately Scott does too. I mean, his parents, really strong Christians, pray for us all the time. So we come from a background of that kind of support. And then I have 2 brothers that I adore, and they're a great support. When my parents died, I'm the youngest, so my 2 older brothers really look out for me, and we all still get together and talk about our kids. They have several kids of their own and marriages, and we have struggles and we have things that we talk about. So I think just having that, so somebody who's known me since day one, the support of all the things I've gone through and been through with my kids and them with their kids. And then I have probably 3 or 4 very close girlfriends. I
Okay.
don't have a ton of friends. I don't have time for that because friends take energy and work. So I have some that have been through all of this with me step by step. And we often pray for each other and just keep each other updated. So having a circle of really close friends that I can be completely honest with. I've cried with them. I've railed and been angry, and they just listen. So I think that's really important because there's things in life that even though I believe in God's sovereignty and I know he's in control, I'm still human. And sometimes that makes me angry or it makes me sad. And then I have an incredible husband, which is an incredible support for me all the way through. I mean, we just celebrated 40 years of marriage,
Wow.
which I'm really proud of, that he's
Yeah.
put up with me for 40 years. So, and we're hoping for 40 more. So
Yeah.
I'm super blessed. And what I tell people about Scott is he's not perfect, but he's perfect for me. So it's exactly what God knew exactly what I needed in a husband. So, and he's an incredible father and grandfather. And I see him doing things with our grandkids that he did with our kids, just the care and the tenderness and the love that he shows. And I think that's a great example for Maddie and her husband. For JD, JD did not grow up in a good situation at all. So he's never had male role models. So I think he looks pretty strongly at Scott for help with that too.
Hmm.
But that's taken a while. So I think my number one support obviously is Scott. He's amazing.
Yeah. How's the dynamics with JD, your son-in-law?
With us,
Yeah.
well,
I mean, it's different, obviously, than with
yes.
Maddie.
Yes. It was, I have to be really honest, it was really difficult at first because we'd met him one time when they said they're getting married and they're having a baby. And we'd never even met him. And Maddie didn't really even know him very well either. That was, again, drove me to my knees, just going, okay, Lord, yeah, I can't fix this.
Yeah.
So they just celebrated 4 years of marriage. It's been a journey. They've had their bumps. The beauty of it is now JD will call Scott and ask for advice, which probably just happened the last 6 months for him to feel
Cool.
comfortable doing that. I mean, that's huge to me. But Scott is the most gentle, kind, non-judgmental, wise man that I know. So the fact that JD feels comfortable calling him is huge. It was very difficult at first. I think Maddie was in a really dark place for a while. And
Yeah.
she came out of it with JD and we're like, okay, well, we don't even know who this guy is.
Right.
So it's been a journey for our family. But again, my prayer every day is that the Lord just invades both of their hearts and draws them to him. I mean, what else can I do? I can't fix it.
Right. And he's on the road a ton for his job.
He is. He a long haul truck driver, so he's gone. So that's also how we've been pretty involved in Maddie's life. I mean, between doctor appointments and pick up and drop off, and sometimes she just needs to sleep. So we'll take all three so that she can rest because yeah, he's gone for 5, 6 days at a time, and I'm not sure that's what she was hoping for when she thought of marriage and a family and kids. I don't think that's what she thought of, but they're figuring it out. They're making it work.
Yeah. Well, she definitely is Superwoman because when I had her on the show, she had all three kids,
Yeah.
and we were gonna start at like two or something. She's like, I'm putting all three kids down. I got one down. And then she sent me a text. I got the second one and then the third one. I can't even get one down.
I know she's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
She has really risen to the occasion, let me tell you.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Although there was something funny the other day, she was at our house and we had all three kids here, and I don't know, one was crying and one was fussing about something, and she looked at me and she goes, "I thought this was going to be fun."
What's your definition of fun?
Yeah, yeah, it all depends. So we laugh a lot,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you, being a grandparent, it's way better than being a parent. There's just a different level of love, but I'm not responsible. So I just get to love them and play with them and feed them. And it's really, I was trying to figure out the difference between as a parent, because of course I love all my kids and all of their stages. But as a parent, you're thinking, okay, now I got to make lunches. I got to do laundry. I got to get them here. I got to get them there. As a grandparent, I'm just going to lay here on the floor with Milo for an hour. I don't care.
Right.
So it's just a whole different feeling, which is really nice.
I kind of look forward to that day sometime.
It's great. It's worth it.
Yeah. So switch gears a little bit as a superintendent. What's your vantage point on the special ed and all that?
Well, I was assistant soup. I wasn't superintendent, but the special ed process is fraught with legalism and frustration from a lot of sides and pieces. There's so many laws and things you need to be careful of and what you can and can't do and is it is this behavior a manifestation of their condition, or are they acting outside of what their issues were, and how do you address them? And they're all different. It's really, really difficult. And in the education system, I know in theory we have all these things that are supposed to work. They don't always work. And then as I watched my girlfriend who was over student services dealing with parents that are in the first place, they're frustrated because they have this child that they're not sure what to do with, but they can't get the schools to do what they want them to do because it takes so long. Everything takes so long. It's really, and it's getting worse. It's very litigious. I know my friend spent a lot of time with lawyers, with all the FAPE and the least restrictive environments and all of the laws and the rules and the regulations that surround these kids. And really, we just want to get them what they need.
Right.
And every kid's different.
Yeah.
So it's education of SPED kids is really difficult. And then you need to find teachers that are willing. I mean, I know Taylor would have been a great one. I know it was a lot for her. But you need people with that kind of a heart, or like with you, people that love these kids and don't see them as disabled or, lacking, but they're just different. And that's one thing I loved about Taylor's comments. She loved her students
Yeah.
and she would laugh with them. And she goes, we have these great students. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just different.
Right. Different.
And
Yeah.
so I'm hoping, little Emma, we're not sure what her progress will be. She's in physical therapy twice a week and she is making progress. We need to get her to stand up on those little legs of hers, but she's making progress. It's just very, very slow. But the cool thing is the therapist goes to our church. Saw her the other day and she goes, oh, oh, it's starting to snow. How lovely.
Nice.
She's making some great progress. So we don't know what her limits are, if you want to call it that, or how far she can go. But we're just going to keep giving her what we think she needs. And she's just this happy little person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I shared a lot of those frustrations with parents in
Hmm.
meetings and whatnot. And every parent has a heart for their kid and they just want what's best for their kid.
Right, right,
And then sometimes the district and everyone doesn't agree with what they should get and yada yada. But what now that I've stepped away from teaching, I've empower parents with they don't realize how much their voice matters. And if they push it hard enough, they're probably going to get what they believe is best for their kid. And the
right.
parent is the expert. I think
Correct.
a lot of times we get in the meetings and we're all the professionals behind the table and they don't know the process and they don't know what to say, so then they kind of just listen. But it's like there
Right.
can be a lot of input
There's a
from
lot of
their side.
steps to make changes and a lot of processes that have to be followed, or that's where the lawsuits come up. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. So as a SPED director, you've got to be super careful and you've got to dot all your I's and cross your T's.
Yeah.
And that's difficult and it takes time. It's really hard to make change with SPED kids, either
Hmm.
change of placement or change of assignment. And then, you've got to have that teacher that has a heart for these kids.
Right. Yeah, Taylor, I could definitely tell.
Mm.
She loved her students. She actually taught at the elementary school of the high school I started at.
Well, that's right. I remember her telling me that.
And that was a wild
Yeah.
school.
The one she was at or the one you were at?
The one, well, so my students came from her. So I got them in high school, and that was my first 2 years teaching. I taught it was just an autism program.
Yeah.
They were all nonverbal and violent. And
Wow.
it was, I mean, that was my favorite 2 years.
Really?
I just found everything was so interesting, and no day was ever the same. No
Yeah, I'll
behavior
bet.
was ever the same. So it was always just trying to figure out and make everything cohesive to make it through the day. I
Yeah.
learned the power of just make it through the day those 2 years.
Yeah. And I think Taylor did too. She loved those kids, but I mean, she got taken to the ground a couple times, and that was rough. I think that was way more. And she didn't even have a credential. She was on a waiver because they
Right.
couldn't find a SPED teacher, so she hadn't even been to school to get her credential yet, and
That's
she was in with these kids.
that's how I started. I got my credential during my first year teaching
Yeah,
because they're like, we don't have anyone. And then I was a guy.
right. That's huge. I know because I was director of HR was on my plate as well. Trying to find SPED teachers was near to impossible.
And I've heard it's gotten worse.
Well, to find teachers,
Teachers in general since COVID.
it's really changed. It's really been difficult. We had so many teachers on waivers because the state opened that up because they knew we were struggling.
Yeah.
But fortunately, in our little town, we did okay. But it was tough as the HR director, which was on my plate as well. When you had SPED openings, you're like, oh no, we're never gonna. And part of it, living in Big Bear, you have to either really want to live here, or some people commute, but not very many. I mean, you either love it or you hate it. People come up for a year and go, nope, not for me. Or they come up and they stay for 38 years like we have.
Well, that's why Drew's so good at working in the snow, right?
You know what? He is. He's a good man.
He don't complain. He'll say make a few comments, but in the end,
Yeah.
he doesn't complain.
Well, he's been sending us weather reports of -1, -2.
I feel bad. He sent me one the other day, and I was like, I'm in sandals and board shorts. Sorry. Hey, but I was like, at least you're inside. You're fine.
That's right. That's because I asked him when he sent it was like -5, and he goes, "Oh no, we're working on a project in the house." I'm like, "Okay, good." He loves it though. He's so happy. He loves it.
Yeah, he's crushing it. Everyone always asks me since I've been in San Diego for some time, like, "Oh, did you close your business or you just had
Yeah.
to go on hold?" And I was like, honestly, it's probably better now than when I left. So that's Drew to thank for that.
You know what? Drew is exactly like his dad. Just kind, gentle, but hardworking, a really strong work ethic. He's just we're so proud of him.
Yeah.
He's a good man.
And for the listeners, Drew, Lisa's son,
My son.
he works with me at construction. All right. So as a grandparent, I imagine people don't realize that you're on a journey as well.
Mhm.
What do you wish people realized about that, or just they knew about
As a
that?
grandparent, I think the most important thing that I'm learning is with this gift of Emma and how it changes the dynamics of learning. As a grandparent, you're not the parent. You don't get to make these decisions. You don't get to direct traffic, which is what I like to do, which is why I was an assistant soup, because I like to tell people what to do. But I think the most important thing is what the kids need is to know that you are on their side and that you are supporting their decisions, even if you don't agree with them. Because they've made several I don't agree with, but it's not my child. But to be supportive and go, okay, I see you've made this decision. How can I help you? I mean, that's my go-to line. How can I
Mm,
support you today? And for Maddie, it's like daily
totally. Well,
being available.
it seems like you kind of get new developments and news every other day. Are you just on pins and needles every phone call you get from her?
Yes, in fact, it's interesting because I know you listed that as one of your questions when, especially during the middle of the day, and this is really for any of my kids, when the phone goes off in the middle of the day, I know there's an issue because Drew should be working and Sydney and Taylor, and if Maddie calls, yeah, it makes my heart race a little bit because we've had our share of, guess what? But again, I go back to God's in control of everything. I mean, and there's really no reason to worry. It's taken me about 62 years to get to this point. When you worry, what you're saying is you don't trust God to handle it. You don't really believe that he's in control when you start to worry, but we're human. So that to me it's a conscious decision to let him to recognize the fact that he's in control. And then showing up for my kids, being
Yeah.
available.
How do you show up even amongst everything you're going through? Well, and that can lead into like, what do you do for self-care to kind of,
Well, I'm a runner,
okay.
so that has got and
In the
I
snow?
run. Yeah, I've run in the snow. Yeah, it's lovely in the snow.
Man.
I learned how to dress. I think the coldest run I've ever done was 7 degrees. As long as you're dressed right, it's good. And I have a dog and we go out and we run. That's pretty much my self-care. And then every day I spend time in a quiet time. I tell Scott I'm praying for his soul every day. But I have verses. I started doing something about 5 years ago. I pick a verse for my kids for the year. And I
Okay.
talk to them like around Christmas and go, how can I pray for you this next year? And they give me some ideas. And then the Lord just really brings verses to mind. And I have a journal and I pray that verse every day, 365 days
Wow.
for that child. Like Drew and Sydney, it's about wisdom, in James 1:5, ask for wisdom with parenting when you need it. And I do it every day for a year. And then I keep a journal of different highlights in their lives, things that have happened. And I'll tell you, it is amazing to go back when I look back 5 years ago where the kids were, all of them, what they were doing. I mean, Maddie didn't even have any kids back then. In fact, she wasn't married back then when I started this. Um, that's been a huge, and I have to do that every day. I'm up in my little office and I go up and have my quiet time. And it's funny, when JD and Maddie lived with us after he had his really bad motorcycle accident, I don't know if you knew about that, but he broke his pelvis and his femur and his hips. And I mean, he was a mess from the waist down in a motorcycle accident. So they lived with us for a while because he couldn't do anything. And he even recognized every day I would go up and take my coffee, go into my office, spend some time. And what I've learned too is to listen to the Lord. We spend a lot of time telling him all of our ideas and our wants and our desires, but I'm learning to listen and not say anything. I started out with 3 minutes. Now I'm up to 12, where I just am quiet and let him talk to me. And if I don't do that, I'm grumpy during the day.
Really?
So I
Okay.
have to start every day with the Lord. And then I ask him, I go, okay, what do you need me to do today? How can I show up for the kids today? And it's been a great habit. And I really, if I miss it, I can really feel it. So I think that is super important to me. And then the running is my physical outlet. And then I told Maddie, if once I have a quiet time and I've exercised, I'm good for the rest of the day, whatever you need. As long as I can get those two things in, I'm good.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
that's huge. I'm a big fan of if you win the morning, you win the day.
oh, I like that.
And I work out at 5 every morning, no matter if I get an hour of sleep or 6 hour,
Yeah.
like that's same thing. Once I get out of the gym, I'm just like, all right, I can conquer anything
Yeah. Yeah.
because the workouts are very difficult. But that if I could just, if I make it through that, I'm good to go. And it's common too, I would imagine, with parents and grandparents or anybody going through any sort of journey or hardship to forget about yourself.
Mm,
Kind of like you give, and then you crash. And
right.
I know I experienced that a lot with parents, like just seeing them show up to IEP meetings just
Yeah.
exhausted,
Yeah.
and I would always ask like, "What are you doing for yourself?" I don't have time.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, the better we are, the better we show up.
Right.
And it
And I
sounds
think that's,
selfish, but it's not.
well, but it's not, because you have to fill your cup if you're going to pour it out. And that's one thing we've really tried to do with Maddie is sometimes just give us the kids for an hour or two. I don't care what you do. Go sit in the car, go sit by the lake, do whatever if you just want to sit on the couch for an hour, do it,
Yeah.
and give us the kids. So being able to provide that for her, I think, has been helpful. And we've done it for both of them. When JD's home, we'll take the kids so they can go to dinner, or they can just have some time without, I mean, because I remember I had 4 kids in 5 years as well. So, and a set of twins to boot. And I just remember to get any time by myself was like a gift. And Scott and I used to joke and go, nobody leaves this house by yourself. If you leave this house, you take a kid or at least 2 with you. You're not leaving me here with all 4. But we used to joke about that. But just, you know, like I said, just showing up for whatever she needs. Not what I think she needs, but what she actually says she needs. Because sometimes I'll say, "Why don't you go take a nap?" She's like, "Mom, I don't want to take a nap. I just want to sit here." I'm like, "Okay."
Okay.
So she's not going to do what I tell her.
Yeah. Well, so much awesome nuggets of wisdom from yourself and Scott. You guys are like the power grandparents, full of wisdom. Uh,
I don't know about that, but we
I
try.
just the mindset and the realization of surrender, like that, and just showing up, ready to
That was
serve.
something my mother, when I was a kid, I remember her singing that song, "I Surrender All." And I thought, oh, Mom, when you're a kid, you don't appreciate it, until I realized that you really have to. And I probably bought that sign. It's about, like, I don't know, 2 feet by 1.5 feet. It's a big wooden sign sitting on my desk to remind me. And I tell my kids all the time, God's got a plan. I don't know what it is, but it's the best one. So you might as well just go with it, and surrendering handing my kids over to the Lord was really hard for me. And I tell you, I do it every day, because every day I want to take them back and tell them what to do. So for me, it was an act of the will to hand them over. And that's why that visual imaging that I do. Another thing I've done too is you visualize meeting, and I've done this with Maddie and JD, meeting the Lord on a dirt road, and then he puts his arm around and walks away, and you turn around and walk the other way. And he's walking away with them. And that, to me, that was a really powerful image for me to leave them in his care
Uh,
and walk away.
yeah,
It's
that's
hard.
that's a great visual. I can I can relate to that with my newborn,
Yeah. Little Jack,
little Jack. Yep,
how old is he now?
he's 4 months.
And he's doing well?
Yeah, he's cruising. He's like 12
Good.
pounds now.
Good.
Yeah, so yeah, he's doing well. We'll close it out with this. What would you tell A, grandparents, and B, parents of special needs kids? I mean, you've kind of hit on a lot of it,
Yeah.
but
I think
closing thoughts.
to sum it up, for parents, not being a parent of a special needs, but watching my daughter parent, you need to I always like what Taylor said, there's nothing wrong with these kids. They're just different. And so you approach them differently. So in my brain, there's nothing wrong with Emma. This is the way God made her. I mean, he made her this way on purpose for a reason. And so if parents can accept that and then do what you can to give that child whatever they need,
Yeah,
and I think I'm sure it puts stress on the marriage as
mm-hmm.
well. And so you've got to be on the same page with the treatment or the care. And then I think as grandparents, we are not in control of what our kids do with their kids, but we can be there to support whatever decision they make. And so it's not a matter of judgment, like, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way, or why didn't you do this? It's how can I support you? How can I, because it's tough, and it's tough as a grandparent to watch your children struggle, whether it's decisions they made, or I mean, like Maddie and JD had nothing to do with this. I mean, this was God's plan, little Emma. But just know, I think them knowing that we support their decisions regardless of what they are, and that we're going to be there to walk them through. I remember when Maddie went to her first ultrasound with Emma, and I was with them. I got to go with them, and JD was there, and this is all new to him, and he was a little bit overwhelmed. And he goes, what if I have a daughter? I don't know what to do with a girl. And I said, we're gonna walk through this journey with you. I go, we're not gonna tell you what to do, but we're gonna be right there with you the whole time. And I think we have been, and I think that's been a big support for them and a big plus. And I think over time they've learned to trust us even more and more, knowing they're not going to be judged. They're just going to be supported.
Yeah, that's a big one. Not to feel any judgment.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for
Well, thank you.
being on. And
I hope there was some things that will help some people
yeah,
when they
I mean,
listen.
just the being with your children, not telling them what to do, surrender. I mean, it's interesting because I'm the host of the podcast, right? But I take away so much
Yeah.
just from hearing everybody's responses. And then it's always, I heard a buddy told me once, like, if you were to throw all of your problems in the air, good chances you would catch your own. Or if everybody threw their problems up,
Huh.
you would catch your own. So it's been fascinating to hear so many different journeys,
Mm.
and I mean, it's helping me for sure. So
Good.
it's an honor to be able to do this.
Well, thank you.